Hello and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Abdullah Wakabladan. I work with Empowering Women for Excellence Initiative and also the Deputy Convener of the Kabilun Africa Think Tank. And welcome once again to this impactful webinar. This is the fourth webinar in a row being organized monthly by the Kabilun Africa Think Tank. And we are going to discuss about building coalition. And our speaker for today is Mr. Yusuf Ishaku. Prior to this webinar, we had 3 other webinars. First in February, second in March, third in April. And the first webinar, we discussed we discussed power dynamics and mapping for effective advocacy, where our speaker highlighted the impact of identifying powerful people that will be able to influence your advocacy drive, and how you are supposed to do your mapping to identify these people and how you should approach those people. And we have sorry for that. So we have success stories from 4 YCFs, Youth Country Focus of the Kabilun Africa Think Tank. The Kabilun Africa Think Tank is a Pan-African think tank that seeks to organize young people and organizations to influence policies that will lead to us getting the Africa we deserve. And under the Kabilun Africa Think Tank, we have about 60 youth country focus from representing 32 countries in Africa. And this country focus have been trained in the areas of policy advocacy and how to influence community actions in their various countries. And a part of this is why we are hosting this webinar, this series of webinars, training them on different tools and knowledge they need to have in order for them to drive effective advocacy. So we had the first webinar on power dynamics and mapping, and the second webinar on leveraging digital media tools for effective advocacy. And the third webinar was on innovative and sustainable solution to regional developmental challenges, where we had breakout sessions with persons representing various zones in Africa. We have representation from East Africa, Southern Africa, West Africa, and we discuss around key issues affecting this part of the continent, and we are developing a document with proposed solutions that will be shared with stakeholders in these various countries, and will also influence actions around these areas. So today, we are going to discuss strategic partnerships and coalition building for policy influence, together with Mr. Yusuf Goje. Yusuf Goje is an experienced civil society leader and also has a lot of experience in building coalition. And I remember his impactful work in building a coalition based in Kaduna State, where they advocate for policy, budget tracking, and also budget analysis. Yusuf Boji is the Executive Director of Civic Impact for Sustainable Development Foundation. And yeah, he has been with us since the inception of this program of the Kabilun Africa Think Tank. He was a speaker during our launching of the Kabilun Africa Think Tank, and also he was here with us during our international conference last 2 years, and he was also here with us during the launching of policy documents last year. So without wasting much time, I will hand over to Sylvia for a brief overview of what Kabilun Africa is all about, and then we'll move to Yusuf Goje, who will guide us through the topic for 30 good minutes, and then we'll have questions and answers, and we'll do a very quick photograph, and we'll collect feedback, and from there we'll all go back to our various activities. Safia Ibn Idabwa, BTRF, is the founder of Empowering Women for Excellence Initiative based in Nigeria. And she is also the convener of the Kabilun Africa Think Tank. So, Safia, over to you.
Thank you, Abdullahi. And I doubt that I even need to say much more. I think you've said more than enough. And interestingly, I'm just looking at our participants list, and everyone here is already connected to KATT. So all I'm going to say is obviously Kabilun Africa Think Tank. This is one of our monthly webinars, as Ladan mentioned. Thank you for making the time to be here. And we have some exciting announcements. We've already shared that in the WhatsApp group. We'll continue to share that throughout the week. But I am personally really looking forward to Yusuf's talk, which, you know, I mean, he has extensive experience in this, like impactful experience. So really looking forward to learning and hearing about the session today, and want to encourage you to you know, join our LinkedIn group so you know what's happening when it's happening. And I'm gonna hand it straight over. Should I hand it over back to you, Ladan, or to Yusuf straight?
Yeah, we got you so straight.
Okay, so thank you, excited, and over to you, Yusuf.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. So, okay, I wanted to ask about the slide. So thank you very much, Safia, for the leadership you have provided through this project, and to Abdullahi and every other team member for all the effort that you've been putting in ensuring that this project deliver on its key objectives. And I'm very confident that with your expertise, wealth of experience, knowledge, at the end of the day, it will be a worthwhile. So I'm also excited that you have found me worthy to make a presentation on a very important topic. For me, this is very important because I was just reflecting on the topic, and one thing that just struck me is the fact that the history of man has always been the history of strategic partnership and coalition building, be it in our homes, be it in our religious places, be it in our schools, be it in our workplaces. It's all about partnerships. It's all about coalition. And at the end of the day, we look forward to achieving certain collective or shared goals that we put to achieve at either corporate, personal, or societal level in general. So thank you very much for this opportunity. So I'll quickly go into my presentation. My name again is Yusuf Ishaq Ugoje, Executive Director, Civic Impact for Sustainable Development Foundation. We basically work around informing, empowering citizens, and creating platforms for people to be able to shape, influence, and inform those decisions that are carried out that directly or indirectly affect them. So this particular session is actually in line with what we do as an organization, so I can see a lot of alignment. So I will just appreciate if we move to the next slide. Yes. So looking at the topic of discussion, there are three key concepts. And this concept has to do with one, strategic partnership, two, coalition building, and the ultimate is the influence over policies. And throughout this session, I'll be discussing around these three key concepts. In a way, you cannot divorce the three concepts when it comes to the development space, because over time, the approach has shifted away from solo efforts to more collaborative efforts in ensuring that government and governance actually benefit the real owners of the power, which is the people. And permit me to start by quoting Helen Keller, who said, "Alone we can do so little. Together we can do so much." And this quote summarizes everything that this topic is talking about and what we'll be discussing throughout my presentation. So quickly move to the next slide. Yes. So like I said earlier on, if you look at the history of man generally, the evolution of man and society, you would see that from beginning, when God created man and woman, he created them for one purpose, to collaborate. And they collaborated in procreation. They collaborated in creating the society that we have today. And that process that gave birth to what we have today as the world and society is a product of collaboration, is a product of partnership. And one of the things that strikes about partnership and coalition building is that most times we engage in this in these concepts. We engage these concepts without consciously knowing that we are doing them. So mostly when we talk about partnerships and coalition building, they can be formal, they can as well be informal, they can be through your direct participation, or even if you don't directly participate in it, you are impacted by that partnership or coalition building. It can be conscious or unconscious, it can be structured or loose, as it were. So it is important that we understand that society itself, the systems that run society, is based on collaboration, is based on partnerships, is based on coalitions. So for example, any organization as we have it today have different departments. And these departments, whether the partnership is written or unwritten, are supposed to collaborate together to achieve the overall results of the organization. And that applies to our various society, be it the prehistoric era down to this current era. We've seen different forms and shapes of partnerships and coalition building towards achieving various activities. I was just also reflecting here in Nigeria. We've seen where, for example, political parties form coalitions, form strategic partnership to really win election and remove a ruling party that has ruled for 15 years. And that's from the political party angle. And even for businesses, we've seen mergers and acquisitions that has been as a result of partnerships and coalitions. Even within our communities, we see various groups come together to carry out community development initiatives. So basically, when you talk of man, whether from the political perspective, whether we look at it from the economic or social perspective, we are talking about partnerships and coalition. As long as there are interactions, as long as there is relationships, it is all about partnership and coalition building at the end of the day. And this is not only looking at the past and the present, but it is what will define the future. And many of us in the development space would see that even some development partners now pay more attention to working with networks, working with coalitions or mechanisms than with individual organizations. And it is because of a lot of factors that we'll be seeing down through my presentation. So we can move to the next slide. Yes. So there's something we need to keep in mind, right? When we talk about strategic partnership, we talk about coalition building, we talk about policy influence. What we are talking about is basically people. So I've seen people talk about that we don't have strong institutions, we have weak systems, but without the people, there are no institutions, there are no systems. They can't function without the people. So when we talk about strategic partnership, whether it's at the organizational level or even at the personal level, it takes people to drive any partnership or coalition building. And without people, none of the shared objectives or goal, whether specific or broad, that we want to achieve or you want to achieve would ever be achieved. Even the heroes, superheroes that we celebrate, both historic and present, you'll find out that they still needed people around them to actually carry out some support functions for them to have been able to achieve the level of prominence that we know them to have achieved. So basically, one individual cannot achieve much unless he has a partnership or a coalition with other people around him or her. And that applies to any organization as we have it. And why am I focusing on the people component of partnerships and coalition building? And for many that follow a lot of Greek philosophy and all of that, there's this popular school of thought that says Greek categorizes three sets of people in a society, state, and country, right? So the first category of people are the idiots. The second category of people are the tribesmen. And the third category are the citizens. Many will be wondering, how does this relate to partnerships and coalition building? If we are building any partnership or coalition, the people in the mix will determine whether that partnership or coalition will, number one, be built, will function as designed, and will be able to influence key policies. Once we don't get the people factor right, whatever we have designed on paper, whatever our collective aspiration is, it will still fail. So that is a perspective I want to put forward. And if you look at how the Greeks define the idiots, idiot might not necessarily mean an insult. It's just a category of people who don't just care about what happens around them. They just live life every day when they wake up, and they believe that anywhere the wind blows, that's where they go. So they are just like a flag. Anywhere the wind blows, they just go. Society progresses, they don't care. Society is suffering, they don't care. Leaders are corrupt, it's none of their business, as long as it does not affect their daily livelihoods. They don't care. So this is one category of people we have in our society, state or country as categorized. The others are tribesmen. And these tribesmen are basically people that are concerned that only about their tribe, their religion, or region. So whatever they do, as long as it is not speaking to their tribe, religion, or region, or possibly their narrow interests, they are not interested in it. Or even when they are interested in it, rather than supporting the collective or shared goal of that partnership or of that particular goal, of that coalition, they end up advancing those personal biases that revolves around their tribe, religion, and region. And that at the end of the day leads to a lot of confusion. Then the last components are the citizens. These are people that do what is right and will do what is right at the right time and in the right way. And looking at these categories of people, for any partnership or coalition to be a success, it must have more of citizens than the tribesmen and than the idiots. So when forming any strategic partnership or building any coalition, you must first of all factor in the actors that are going to be involved in it. So I just needed this so that we keep this in mind, so that we don't just talk about strategy and all of those other components of coalition. So that is very critical when doing that. So we can quickly move to the next slide so that I also manage the space. So looking at strategic partnership and coalition building, right? Just to give us an understanding of it. One of the things that I have come to realize is that coalition, as it is just a form of strategic partnership. So strategic partnership could actually be working towards achieving a specific goal or a broader goal where you bring more actors with various interests to drive it. While some kinds of strategic partnership could just be between two organizations just signing into an agreement to deliver a particular goal or outcome, while coalition could have probably a more broader goal because it encompasses a lot of actors, a lot of organizations coming together to drive that process. It can be focused or it can be diverse in its scope. So it's almost dependent on the goal that is being targeted at achieving. So if the goal is specific, then you find out that the scope might just be focused or narrow in terms of its coverage. While if it's broad, it can be diverse. So it can be formal, where there are a lot of signings and agreements on paper, or it could just be informal, where people come to agree to carry out certain activities. It could be closed, where it is just for the partners that are involved. If it's two partners, they restrict it to those two partners to carry out that particular project, program, or activity. Or it could be more of an open system where anybody of interest can come and join. For some, it could be fostering just the individual interest of the actors, and for others, it could be actually the collective interest. But by and large, when we talk about this concept, we are talking simply about collaboration. Collaboration between one or two or diverse people. It is the terms of the collaboration that now differs based on context. So sometimes we could just define it as a strategic partnership between one or two persons or three persons to achieve a goal, or it could just be around a particular issue of interest, pulling all the interested partners into a coalition so that we have more impact or more effect in terms of what we are championing in that regard. So we could quickly move to the next slide. Yes. So we have looked at briefly around strategic partnership as well as coalition building. And one of the takeaways is that coalition is more of a strategic partnership that different groups come into agreement based on their interest, collective interest to achieve a shared goal. So why would people naturally want to come together to achieve a shared goal, especially since we are looking at the development space? Because there are processes through which decisions are being made. And when coalitions are formed, they need to be able to either inform They need to either influence, they need to also be able to shape or change that particular process. And one of the key pillars of the processes in governance is policy. So coalitions and partnerships and how they can influence policy must be seen in the context of systems. So policies on their own do not stand, it is not a standalone pillar. It is dependent on other pillars for any policy to be able to translate from ink on paper to tangible results that can impact people's lives, especially the vulnerable. So just to give us a context, a very simple context of what policy is or what policies are. Basically, if you review any policy, what the policy is talking about is one, why, the what, the who, the how, the where, the whom, and when of government's intentions, guide, rules in order to address a problem or to meet the people's needs. So any policy that you open, you would see that that is what it is trying to explain. Why is government trying to address a particular problem? What they will do to address it? Who is responsible for that? How, which probably talks about the strategy, the objectives and strategies of how to do it, where they will do it, whom in terms of the targets, and when would they do it, are usually what is structured into policies that gives an expression of government's intention, guide, rules, or even priorities in order to address a certain problem or problems or meet the people's needs. But to properly put policies into perspective, we have to look at the value chain of governance, right? Every government that comes into power must translate its campaign promises into policies. So during campaigns, our politicians make a lot of promises, right? They will put ATMs in everybody's house. They will ensure that our taps are running with milk and honey. They would ensure that everybody has a private jet and all of the things that they promise us that sound sweet to our ears. But those will just remain rhetorics even after they win elections until they are able to translate this into actual policies of government. So one of the factors we need to consider when forming coalition is, for example, to ask the critical question: the government's social contract with us, is it what is reflected in our policies? So policies are just an expression of government's intention and policies, usually broken down into sectors. So you could have policies for health, you could have policies for education, you could have policies for human services and social development, depending on where you are, and a lot of policies. You could have them expressed as regulations. Policies can come in the form of regulations. In some areas, they could even come in the form of laws. But at the end of the day, these policies, do they really reflect the interest of the people? Because remember, when I started my presentation, I said partnerships and coalition is about the people, just the way government is about the people, right? Just to give also context, why is it about the people? It is because power belongs to the people, and people come together, whether through election, and this is Africa, sometimes we do selection, not all the times that we do election. We hand over our sovereignty, our powers, over our resources, over critical decisions that affect our lives to a few individuals. And these few individuals are those that we either elect or in some instances, they select themselves. Either way. And those powers are actually our powers. We only give those powers to those leaders to take those decisions or implement those decisions in trust. So at the end of the day, if it is our power, and if public resources is our resources, and the people in those offices, be it the president, the governors, or the chairman, depending on wherever you are and the country you are. But I'm just giving from the context of Nigeria. Whatever powers they have, whatever resources they are utilizing, it is the people's resources. So if you own the resources, it is only logical that you have a greater say in how those resources are to be applied and what should be the priorities in terms of applying those resources, right? So policies should actually be an expression of the people's aspiration. So any policy you open, it shouldn't be a product of a consultant. It shouldn't be a product of civil servants or other public servants. It should be a product of the aggregation of the issues that affect the generality of the people, as well as the key priority areas of focus that the government wants to ensure that they apply both human, material, and financial resources towards addressing those issues. And that is why the relationship between the people and public officials is that of demand and supply. So government has two pillars, right? Demand and supply. So the generality of the people outside government are actually the demand side of government, while the few people who are public servants and civil servants are the supply side. So the relationship should actually be that of demand and supply. So because we are the demand side, we need to demand from those in office to supply what we need. And part of influencing policies by the generality of the people is ensuring that the demands of the people is what is reflected in our policies. Because policies is what should dictate the development plan of government, the various strategies that government will be putting in place, as well as how government spends its budget. So it is critical that in forming coalitions and partnerships, we must understand and be clear that policies should naturally, and we'll see that as we move forward, be an expression of the demands or the priorities, a priority of needs of the people in that direction. So as civil society who represent the citizens, or as leaders in our various communities who represent others, when we form coalition, we need to understand that we are not just engaging policies because it is an activity or because it's just a career. We are actually engaging policies to ensure that the decisions that government make actually addresses the real issues that affects people. So how do we ensure that the policies in health is actually leading to the reduction in terms of child and maternal mortality? How do we ensure that the policies in education is actually reducing the issues of out-of-school children, illiteracy, and improving learning or reducing learning poverty? How do we ensure that the policies around social development is ensuring that no one is left behind and ensuring that poverty is being reduced, that our society is actually creating systems that is catering for the most vulnerable among us. So that should be clear when it comes to engaging. And why am I showing you the diagram on my slide? Is so that you understand that beyond just engaging policies, we have to go through the value chain. So if you see the picture from where I'm sitting down now by my right, you see that we have various policies. It is these policies that are summarized into the priorities that are captured in the development plan of either the country or the subnational, which is in this case, the state or local government. So every government must be able to have a summary of its key policies captured into a plan, usually a medium-term plan or a long-term plan. So you see some development plans happening within 5 years, some other development plans having lasting 10 or more years as we have them. So it is these plans that are now reduced into strategies. In Nigeria, where we are at the federal level, we call them medium-term sector strategies. So for every sector, health, education, a strategy is brought out where the programs that would deliver the result that government wants to achieve, what it will cost, and who are the actors are clearly outlined in those strategies. So at the national level in Nigeria, they call it medium-term sector strategy. Where I am from, Kaduna, we call it sector implementation plan. These are all strategies of government in terms of how they will address the issues that affect the generalities of the people that put them in office. Then these strategies are now translated into a financial plan, which is what we call the budget, which is what we usually call the budget. And it is this budget that will determine whether our policies will translate from beautiful ideas on paper on the shelves of government offices to actually impacting the lives of the people that we work for them. So forgive me for taking much time here because it is critical when we are forming these partnerships and coalitions that we understand the system that we want to either influence or shape or even change before engaging, because most times you cannot change what you don't understand. So if we are going to change policies, we can actually be brought to the table to inform policies. But once those policies are not implemented, it will remain at the realm of academic exercise that largely benefits no one except the consultants and the people that drafted it who might have benefited from the process financially. So we can move to the next. So why should organizations enter strategic partnership and build coalitions for policy influence, right? So the picture beside said, together everyone achieves more. So basically it answers every other thing it answers the above question. But basically, if whatever country we belong to, right? If you look at our constitution, there are fundamental rights, right? That looks at freedom of association, which is what actually partnerships and coalition is all about. So the Constitution has also given us that leverage. But more specific, right? You find out that the Constitution has not only told us what our rights are, but the Constitution has also usually will tell you what our roles, responsibilities, and duties are. And in achieving our roles, responsibilities, and duties, it encourages people to participate in community development. I do not have an idea of the number of countries that are part of this, but I would have looked at other constitutions. But for the Nigerian constitution, if you go to section 24, it's part of the duties of any citizen is to participate in community development. So when you talk of community, you're talking of a collective. You're talking of people coming together to collaborate to bring about development. Then when you also look at the Constitution, you go to section 14, it clearly states that the participation of the people in their government is guaranteed by the provisions of the Constitution. So if your participation in how government functions is guaranteed by the Constitution, then it means that to be able to achieve the objectives that the Constitution has set out, you must look at relevant sections that empowers you as an individual, but makes it a duty for you to participate in community development at whatever level. So we must understand that we have a constitutional backing, and the Constitution should guide whatever we do. For example, I tell people this more often than not. I say, what the Constitution is to the citizen is what the Bible is to a Christian, and the Quran is to a Muslim, and other religions that have their religious books. So I'm not comparing the Constitution to a religious book, but I'm just trying to show us how important it is for everyone to read the Constitution, because the Constitution is like the roadmap that a country, the collective in a country have agreed to guide them to their predetermined destination as a people. So in there, you have the rules and the regulations, the rights, the duties, what should be the key objectives of government, the various institutions. All of that is the guide that should dictate our livelihood. So if you don't even know what is in the Constitution, whether you form a strategic partnership or build a coalition, you would be driving that process out of ignorance. Because yes, the Constitution has backed what you are doing, but ignorance will limit the level of impact you are able to achieve. Because every sphere of our life, in one way or the other, has been broadly captured in the Constitution. So we might argue that the Constitution is faulty and all of that, but it is what we have. And if truly we will sincerely implement what we have, we will definitely get the result that we want, and we can improve on it over time. Then secondly, why it is important is because we run in most countries a democratic governance, right? And the popular definition is government of the people, by the people, and for the people, which is the popular definition of democracy, right? So, and what is the concept behind this? When you say government of the people, right, you're talking of the fact that the government must be a product of the people. So usually through elections. And for elections to happen, a collection of votes must be collated to form a majority before anybody can be elected into office. So you need that form of collaboration for anybody to emerge as winner. And that is why, for example, the political actors form alliances, do mergers, and a lot of coalitions in order to ensure that they are able to pull enough votes to actually win an election. So on its own, that is a form of collaboration. Then the second component is government by the people, right? And this is basically talking of after electing leaders, you are now moving to the realm of governance. And this is where policy influence has a critical role to play, even though it also has a critical role to play in the electoral process. Because the mistake we make is that when elections are happening, that is when we are supposed to form partnerships and coalitions to champion the issues we care about, to ensure that we sign social contracts with the candidates before they are elected, so that by the time they are elected and it's time for governance, you can now reappear and begin to discuss how those can translate into policies. So our policy engagement should not be after election. it should be before elections, then we can take it forward. I remember in the last election here, we were able to hold a dialogue with the governorship candidates, and we were able to get them to sign social contracts on the key sectors that we had priorities on. Immediately after elections, we engaged their transition committees to also further advocate for those issues that we had gotten them to sign as social contracts. So it is key that I mentioned that. So in terms of government by the people own the government. The powers that the governor exercises is the power of the people. The resources that the governor utilizes is the resources of the people. So it means that the people should have a say how that power is deployed and how that resources is employed for the greater good. So it is important that we use these partnerships and coalitions to begin to engage the governance process and take ownership of the governance process. And I tell people this, that the day we treat public funds, or the day we see public funds the way we see our private funds, our society will move forward. When you give, let's say you have a house help, right? And you send the house help to the market, and you give the house help money and list to go to the market. When the house help comes back, you have to call the house help to ask for accountability. Did you get all the things I said you should get? At what prices? Did you even get the right things at the end of the day, right? That is what we do with our private funds. But when it comes to public funds, which is still our funds, although it is collectively owned, we just send them to the market with a list after election, then we go to sleep. And we come on social media insulting them. And you know, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So if you don't engage them, if you don't call them to account, they will definitely misuse and abuse the funds at their disposal, because they know all you can do is come on social media and scream. But the moment we begin to, and that's why I took time in the previous slides to help us understand the value chain within the governance space, so that our engagement does not stop only at policy. Oh, let's have gender and social inclusion policy. The issue does not stop there. There are other stages that we need to advocate and engage for what we have influenced in the policy to translate into tangible results. And this all happens at the governance space, which is governance is simply and squarely decision-making. So if you don't participate in the decision-making, you don't benefit. It's just like sitting on a dining table, right? If you're not on the table, the people on the table will end up eating all the delicious part of the meal. And at the end of the day, if you are the patient dog waiting by the side, you are waiting for the bone to be thrown at you. And you wag your tail taking the bone, when actually you should be on the table determining how that food should be shared and eaten. But no, many of us just sit on the tail or on the ground as the patient dog, and anything thrown at us, the bone or the crumbs, we're happy. And the day that crumbs and bones are not thrown at us, we keep backing, and that is where it stops. We don't bite. So how do we get ourselves to sit on that table? And because the economy is becoming hard all over the world, especially for us in sub-Saharan Africa, you find out that even those on the table are no longer leaving the bone for the patient dog. So the patient dog is no longer seeing the bone. So at the end of the day, the patient dog will wait patiently, there's no bone. All he has to do is to run out and go and scavenge. And at the end of the day, that's the end of the story. So the last part is government of the people, government for the people. So government for the people means that all decisions that have been taken should translate into impacting the lives of the people. So we also have a role to play here. Beyond just influencing policies when we form coalition, we must ensure that these policies actually translate to the results that impact the people that we say we work for. We can quickly go to the next one. Yes, so basically, I've given just a brief idea of what strategic partnership and coalition is. But give and take, when we are looking at policy influence and we are looking at strategic partnership and coalition building, it rises and falls on collaboration. That is basically what all of the plenty grammar is, collaboration. People with diverse capacity, diverse resources, but who share the same interest or aspiration, decide to come together to share their resources, as well as share the burden, as well as share the risk involved in ensuring that that particular issue is addressed or that policy is influenced. So basically, to ensure that we are able to influence any system, advocacy is the key. So when it comes to advocacy, coalition building is one of the strategies. Because if you go it alone, there's very little you can achieve. But if you have the numbers, forget the resources that you have, forget the network that gives you. Government is about the majority, right? The majority should have their way and the minority should have their say. So at the end of the day, any issue that you care about and it is not popular, usually would not influence. When you carry out advocacy around that issue, you would hardly create the needed influence. So for your issue to really carry the weight that is needed for government to take action, you must be able to demonstrate some level of popularity and buy-in and ownership by a cross-section of the society or by multi-stakeholders. So it is important to understand that government and governance is a competition of diverse interests. So you care about, let's say, gender-based violence, right? And you want government to act around it. Another person cares more about infrastructure. Another person cares more about education. Another person cares more about health. So, and government has limited capacity, has limited resources to be able to do everything. So per time, government has to take a decision and focus on one or a few priorities. They cannot take all the priorities. So in the avalanche of demands of various interest groups, what will make your own interest about the issues you care about influence government policies? It is your capacity to demonstrate that this is an important issue, an urgent issue, and an issue that affects different or diverse categories of our society. So even in advocacy, you need that to be able to drive any influence in terms of policy. So collaborative advocacy is a strategic partnership where diverse actors or organizations driven by a shared goal work together towards promoting, supporting, even opposing a cause or policy towards informing or influencing positive change. So sometimes government can introduce policies that are even anti-people or affect disproportionately a segment of the society that you care about, that you work around their issues. So for you to be able to influence government, you have to be able to carry out collaborative advocacy for a lot of factors that we'll be seeing in the course of the discussion below. So we can move to the next slide. So just to look at what are the benefits of this collaborative advocacy. One, it ensures that you have what is called shared resources and expertise. You cannot have it all, and you cannot be it all. So you cannot have all the resources that you need to carry out an advocacy. You cannot have all the expertise that you need to carry out an advocacy, be you as an individual or as an organization. So collaborative advocacy offers you the avenue to leverage the resources of others so that it complements the limitation of your own resources or expertise. It also helps you to lighten the burden. So imagine as an organization, you're carrying out an advocacy around persons with disability, and you need, let's say, 100 million naira to carry out such an, or dollars. No, not $100 million. That would be too much. Let's say you need $100,000 or 100 million naira, wherever you are. At the end of the day, when you are collaborating or when you engage in strategic partnership or you enter a coalition, it lightens the burden, because at the end of the day, instead of spending 100% of the resources, you might end up spending a quarter of that resources because other partners are pulling in their own resources. Same with expertise. Instead of going to hire consultants to provide certain expertise, you could just enter a partnership with an organization that has that expertise, or within your coalition, others can bring that expertise, and you don't need to spend money to carry out that expertise. So it reduces the burden and reduces the risk, your exposure to risk as an individual, as an organization. And most times, when you go as an individual organization to carry out an advocacy, it is easier for government to victimize you, especially when you are opposing a particular policy of government that your organization have every evidence to show that it is anti-people or anti a segment of the society that you work for. So you as an individual, you're more exposed to political risk when you go alone than when you go as a group. So that's one benefit of forming a coalition as a strategic partnership for advocacy. Then number two is that it helps you get diverse perspective. There are angles to issues that you might not be able to have foreseen, that another person, based on his knowledge, experience, and exposure, can come and share with you. And that perspective could actually be the filler of the missing link that would determine whether your advocacy succeeds or fails in terms of influencing policies. So it is critical that to factor in those perspectives that it brings to light. And you know, just like the illustration of the blind men who were brought together to touch an elephant, right? Everybody is touching different parts of the elephant. And depending on the part of the elephant that any of the blind man touches, that's the only perspective he will tell you. He will hold the leg and describe it as a trunk of a tree. Some will hold probably the tusk and call it probably whatever he wants to call it, right? So having all those angles pulled together helps you get the bigger picture of the issue. So then the next one is that it widens your scope and coverage. Sometimes there are certain coalitions that somebody might not bring money, somebody might not bring expertise, somebody might not bring materials, and all of that we usually expect. Somebody or an organization might just have the network. They might have the contact to that one person that will change everything, right? Or you want to carry an advocacy and it affects people in the rural areas. And as an organization, the scope of where you work is the urban areas. When you enter into a partnership or a collaboration or a coalition, you can pull in partners that live in rural areas so that your coverage becomes more wider and the scope of the work you do is more wider in that sense, right? So when you have those partnerships or the coalitions, it also enhances your credibility. Because government also knows that this is not just one organization that probably is championing the narrow interest of the leader of that organization. It could actually be that when you build partnership and coalition, there are people that, like I said, in terms of coverage, there are people that it is just their personality that is well known to be people of integrity. By just bringing them into your advocacy, either through partnership or coalition, it enhances your credibility. I've seen situations where the civil society will want to do something. They will even go and pull in development partners into the partnerships. And why? Because they know that because of the credibility of the development partner, the government will listen and hear what they are saying. Some will go and pull in traditional rulers. And government will know that this issue that you're pushing also is an issue that a wide range of, say, the segments of the society are also interested in it. So the next one is it increases impact. That is a given. Then in terms of sustainability, because the burden on the organizations is a bit lighter when they form coalitions or enter strategic partnerships, it's easier for them to consistently continue the work that they do in terms of policy influence. Next. So for collaborative advocacy to be effective, it must be guided by the following. One is that it must be beneficial to all partners, right? It's any partnership or coalition building that is not a win-win one is bound to fail, because conflicts either now or in the future would definitely emerge. Partnerships and coalitions are supposed to be symbiotic relationships, not parasitic relationships, right? There are people that are always eager to enter coalitions, and they are not going into those coalitions because they have any value to add to those coalitions, but they are only looking at what they can get. They only appear when there seems to be benefits, but when it is time for work, they disappear. So quickly, every partnership and coalition must be built on trust and respect, open communication, inclusive decision-making. There's what is usually called elite hijack, right? Where a few people hijack the leadership of the coalition, and as they single-handedly take decisions and determine what happens. And when the benefits come, they push the benefits to their side and push explanation to the other members. They are always explaining, and that is what they do. So everybody, there must be a system within the coalition that enables everybody's voice to count in decisions that are taken. There must be clear, flexible, and adaptable in terms of changing realities. Usually, advocacy is not a linear process. So there are a lot of twists and turns that can happen. So sometimes when you draw up your advocacy strategy, you might find out that by the time you start implementation, you might need to review your advocacy strategy periodically, because the realities you had anticipated due to factors you might not have envisaged might change. And your strategy must be flexible enough to change and adapt as quickly as possible. If not, you might miss out on the opportunity to do that. So for example, you might have planned that you would go and pay an advocacy visit to someone in his office. And all of a sudden, you go out to jog in the evening and you bump into the person, and it is an opportunity for you to pitch your advocacy message and deliver your advocacy ask. At that point, you would now have to adapt quickly and ensure that your message is driven home, and probably you get the results that you want. And most times, what we have realized with advocacies, especially around policies, is that formal meetings, engaging in formal advocacy most times do not give you the results that you want, especially as per the time you want it. So most time it is in informal settings that you get your advocacy driven. So for example, a lot of the decisions that happen in our countries, as people that know what happened will tell you that these decisions are taken in golf clubs, in long tennis clubs, as well as even in restaurants. So they are not usually in conference halls and all of that. So when you form these partnerships and coalition, you must ensure that there's that flexibility and adaptability in your strategy as being carried out. So next. So just to give us a guide in terms of how to ensure that we have our strategic partnerships and coalition building is effective in terms of policy advocacy. There are a lot of factors that we need to curtail with when carrying out policy advocacy. Therefore, we need to ensure that we are prepared. And for us to be prepared enough, because it's not enough to just pull people together. And I've seen this happen in our society, in our climes here, where if coalitions are being formed, we end up inviting the people that we like, the people that are our friends, and all of that. And at the end of the day, we do not factor in what they are bringing on board. We just bring them out of convenience, of relationship, of being used to the people and all of that. And that at the end of the day affects your partnership. So in putting partnerships together, especially strategic partnership and building coalition, there are a lot of tools, right? And these tools are used for different purposes. But for this purpose, I believe these tools can help in ensuring that your strategic partnership, your coalition building actually leads to policy influence. And one of the things that should naturally be the foundation for putting together any strategic partnership or building any coalition is to identify a common problem that all of you care about. So most times, especially as organizations, we are always quick to jump into activities without even understanding what the issue we really need to focus about is to be. So for example, we just focus on there is, let's say, increase in gender-based violence, right? but we don't really drill down to go deep to identify what is the root causes, right? So when we are able to identify those root causes, it helps us better identify the kind of partners that we need. But if we leave it at the level of the broad problem, we can just invite everybody into the coalition or everybody into the partnership. And it is during implementation, then you now understand that most people that you have brought in are square pegs in round holes. But when you drill down to the root cause or the root problem you want to focus on, it's now more specific. So it's easier for you to know the kind of resources you need. It's better, it puts you in a better position to know the kind of skills you need to leverage, the kind of networks you need to build. So in forming coalition, you must look at the issue that you are advocating for, that you want to ensure that it influences the policy, and it's not only influencing policy, but it's actually being implemented as designed. Then you must be able to really understand the problem itself. And that will give you a pointer to identifying the kind of partners that you need. Another important tool that you need when it comes to identifying your partners in a coalition is the SWOT analysis. So if you are an organization and you're about to take the lead in setting up a coalition, or you want to enter a partnership with one organization or two organizations, what you need to do is to do a SWOT analysis so that you already, it helps you know what your strengths are. But what it will help you do is to understand your weaknesses. So any partner that you're going to bring into the coalition should actually be coming in to cover your weaknesses. So if you have weaknesses, but you end up bringing partners that share the same strengths with you, then you now find out that your advocacy will continue to face challenges, because those weaknesses will now translate into or transform into barriers and challenges that will hinder you. So also, when looking at the opportunities that are available to you, you have to factor in who are the partners that you need that would ensure you leverage or take advantage of certain opportunities that you might not be in a position to take advantage of for your advocacy, collective advocacy or collaborative advocacy to be able to influence policy. The same with your threats. So for example, you're carrying projects in communities, right? And there's insecurity. You should naturally know that in your coalition, if it is allowed, you can either bring in even the local vigilantes to be part of your coalition, because when you're carrying out that project, they will give you local intelligence as regards security, when to come in and when not to come in. So carrying out SWOT analysis is critical before forming that. And it is based on based on those weaknesses, based on those opportunities, based on those strengths, that it will help you outline the kind of partners that you need to invite into the coalition, right? So you can also do the pestle analysis, which is the political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental, right? So this is just to help you carry out a situational analysis around the environment or the sphere that would impact your partnership or coalition. So for example, if you look at the political angle, so for example, we were discussing with someone recently, and we said in that particular state, the previous governor was reform-driven, while the incumbent governor is more politically driven. So the politically driven governor might interpret the work the civil society is doing as opposition, as against civic engagement. So it helps you strategize. It helps you even identify the kind of partners you need in your partnership and coalition. Because the moment the government, for example, sees that your partnership is built around people that are politically exposed, it tends to affect the work you do. So you need to look at that, the legal framework within which your advocacy is going to be carried out. It already gives you an idea that you need lawyers, you need people with experience around engaging those things. So those are the factors. Economically, for example, in countries where know a lot of economic hardship is happening, so that should also influence your partnership, the kind of coalitions you build. So you know that you also need to carry along partners that also can influence can bring resources to the advocacy. So these are a lot of factors. Social, you know that you need to look at what role would traditional institutions play and all of that. Tech, the world is now driven by technology and innovation. So any coalition you're building and you're not bringing in the tech people, then, or innovative people, then I can assure you there's limit to the impact you can achieve. We've seen how, for example, leveraging social media, how politicians now spend hours on social media, how politicians have reversed policies because of engagements on social media. Twitter can be negative, but Twitter can get you results as fast as possible. We've seen legal components where we see that there are bills that are being introduced to ensure that they close down the civic space and all of that. Sustainability issues around environment and all of that. So these are just tools that helps you really strategically position your partnerships and your coalition. So you need to, in strategy, you need to understand your environment.
Sorry, Yusuf, not to interrupt you, but I think we need a part 2 of this. This is getting so interesting. We're far behind time now. So are we able to wrap up in the next 5? Or
yes, I can do that in the next 5 minutes. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes. I wanted to even ask what time I had remaining.
Thank
you for doing the reminding. All right.
Okay.
Yes. So I'll just go through them. Then you need to employ stakeholders and power mapping. That is key. You need to understand a lot of factors: who has power, who has influence in terms of forming your coalition. You need to even know who is your ally, who is going to oppose your advocacy or policy issue that you're pushing, as well as lastly, who don't care, and how do you ensure that you shift their positions. You need an advocacy brief that is targeted at the policy people that you're working around. You need a work plan and an M&E framework that will guide you through the implementation. You need a strategic direction, right? And this strategic direction should be the basis for forming any partnership or coalition, because you need to be clear about your vision, your mission, what are the core values that will guide the partnership and coalition. You could take it down to what are the goals, the objectives, and all of those critical components that you need to carry out. But more importantly, you need to have a result framework, because if you don't have clearly defined results framework, then it's going to be very difficult for you to achieve the goal, because if you don't know where you want to go, you probably never arrive at that location. So we can move to the next slide. So it's actually the last one. So these are just a few quotes, just to give perspective. Collaboration is a key part of the success of any organization. Executed through a clearly defined vision and mission, and based on transparency and constant communication. So this says it all when it comes to strategic partnership and coalition building. Like I said from beginning, those two concepts are speaking to one thing: collaboration, to achieve bigger results. Then secondly is effectively, change is almost impossible without industry-wide collaboration, cooperation, and consensus. So these are ingredients also needed for any strategic plan or document, strategic partnership or coalition that you are building. I wanted to put challenges, but just like anything in life, there would always be challenges, but it becomes easier when those challenges are anticipated and addressed. And they usually cut across trust. They usually cut across financing. They usually cut across change of interest, because there are people that will start with you, but at a point in time, you now realize that the interest is now diverging in that direction. So in all of this, going back to my initial slide, we should ensure that in mapping out any partnership or coalition, the people involved are the determinants, not just the strategy, not just the resources, but the people. Let's ensure that we have more of citizens than tribesmen and idiots. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yusuf. I think we definitely want to give Yusuf a big, big, big round of applause. I mean, there were rounds of applause as you were speaking, but obviously, wow, there are so many sound bites there. We could make a book of your sound bites. And I think for me, one of the key ones was you can't change what you don't understand. And I'm hoping that, you know, our youth understand that we are on a journey, not just our youth, but everyone that's part of the think tank understands that we're on a journey of understanding why and what we're doing together. Thank you so much. I think what we can do with questions is that we can take your questions, and then we're going to beg Yusuf at some point to come and maybe do a mentoring session with us, if Yusuf would oblige us that. I think it's extremely important, you know, also for people to be able to share their own experiences and get some advice. And Yusuf, I'm putting you on the spot now and actually requesting that from you, if that will be possible. Will it be?
Yes, it is. It is very possible. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So we will certainly in the coming months put out a call for questions, areas that people need mentoring on, especially when it comes to this. You have extensive experience and all of that, and the knowledge, and you know, your practical experience. This is really what we need so that we can continue to strengthen capacities around. I believe, Angela, our main announcement is the reminder for our Youth Country Focals meeting on 30th April. You can put it in the chat, please. And Uche, we're going to take a photograph, but while Uche is preparing for that, please put on your cameras. I'm also going to launch the feedback, the poll, so that we can hear from you. No need to wait until later on. I'm just going to launch that. So while we're getting ready, putting on our makeup, we actually had a registration of 60 people for the webinar. So, you know, I think it's a combination of time, combination of a few other things, timelines, and also time of the day, but I'm really glad we still had some of our to answer your question, Yusuf, KATT currently has a footprint in 33 African countries. So we're really trying to get deep into the work. We don't just want to be a think tank that talks. We want real whether it's at local level or any level, just real impact, no matter how small it is. So is everyone on camera so we can do a quick photo? So Uche can do a quick photo, meanwhile also completing the satisfaction survey. All right, do we have any? Yeah, I see I see Tata, Matoto's here, Kenneth is here. All right. Oh, done? Okay, thank you, Uche. And we want to highly, highly appreciate Yusuf. As we said, we're going to come back with the questions. Mentoring, it's going to be more of a mentoring session. And we will certainly send the call out for any questions and comments. We should learn to have 1 hour, 30 minutes for our webinar, I think. We're waiting for you to complete. Only 2 people have completed the satisfaction survey. If you could quickly do that as we round up. And then Angela, do you have any additional announcements while while we're still completing the survey?
No additional announcements. I have the announcements typed in the chat room right now.
Okay. So Angela is going to put it in, waiting for a few more responses, please. So we want to know your level of satisfaction with the content of the webinar, also the delivery of the webinar, and I think we have a question on how useful and applicable. I would personally say 200% for me. And then obviously any other feedback. So just waiting for a few more responses. We currently not at the threshold, we're currently at 37% of those on the call. So just giving you an additional 1 minute. As we said, announcements are going to be in the chat. Reminded of the country issue mapping, obviously, and the youth country focals General Assembly on the last Friday. Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. We have 50%. We just need a few more people to complete the survey and we will be done. While people are completing, Ladan, you can go ahead and close. And thank you once again, Yusuf. Always informational, in-depth, rich, and we leave there, encouraged to continue our work. Thank you. Okay, Ladan seems to be missing. So yeah, we're closing. Please make sure you complete the survey before you leave. Thank you very much. And thank you also for staying for the time, and see you on Friday, 30th. Before then, lots of news on WhatsApp.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. See you on Friday.
All right. Thank you for having.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, now see, I think they don't.
Uche. Uche, we can hear you. Okay. All right. Bye.
Bye.